Back in the very first mod review, in fact, the very first video of this entire channel, I pointed out that Ajimuk went with the far less interesting title of Tomb King's Extended Roster and Campaign Mechanics instead of going with the mod pack's name of Doom Compilation. Clearly, my suggestions are falling on deaf ears here because today's mod calls itself Return of the Lichemaster. Okay, not bad, kinda epic sounding, I guess, but not nearly as catchy as Hobo. Come on, Cataph and Vandy, what are you even doing?
Wow.
Alright, so if the name didn't give this away, the writing on this mod is pretty laid back and fun. I mean, hell, you can just take a look at the mod page to see what I mean. I'll have it linked down below. Heinrich Himmler's from this ridiculous fun era of GW, back before everything was all grim, dark, and doomy. And the modders here have really run with that concept about it. And for what it's worth, in case you're thinking this is kind of just for the lulz kind of mod, I'm going to put that to bed right now. This is not only one of the most interesting modded factions in the entire game, this makes them probably the most interesting faction, period, in the entire game. See, instead of the Barrel Legion just being vampire counts but worse, the mod authors took them and just completely changed every single aspect of them, top to bottom. They're now a horde race, but unlike other hordes, you can only recruit legendary lords, of which there's only 4 for this particular faction. Heinrich Himmler himself now has necromantic power attribute, so when it's low, if he dies, that's probably going to be it for you, and that'll be it for your campaign. But when it's high, you get extra lives, kind of like in Super Mario, and also you can take over specific barrows when it's extremely high. So it definitely makes for a far more interesting campaign experience. Of course, their entire roster has also been redone, with the roster tailored almost exclusively towards necromantic units. So while you do lose a couple of the cool vampiric units like the Blood Dragons and the Black Coach, I mean, you gain zombie dragons, you gain some really high-end constructs to fill in those gaps for them. On top of that, too, each of the armies has unique call-ins at the start of the battle, which means you will almost always be able to go past the 20 unit max roster at the start of the battle. And even if that somehow wasn't all enough, unlocking the Regiments of Renowns requires special tasks to unlock, so usually it involves creating a new barrow, as opposed to just the, reach a certain level of vanilla Regiments of Renown. Also, something that I really did want to point out as being extremely well done, the Regiments of Renown in this tend to be completely unique within the roster, not just base units, but, with a better attribute somewhere here or another. So continuing on from all this too, the skills trees have been modified also obviously to account for the new units, but they also play very, very different than vanilla. So for example, there's no tier 7 or gold chevron bonus skills to speak of, and also you lack almost all of the healing options that you'd normally find in the vampire counts. So you really, really need to plan things out in advance. Your troops are significantly stronger, I would say, but if you play reactionary, like what you can with the vampire counts, your army will collapse in very short order. And this isn't even touching upon the other really, really cool campaign element that causes you to interact more with ruins than any other race, the barrows. So your roster is split between risen units and barrow units, the latter of which are fully healed by defiling barrows. However, when choosing to defile a barrow, it will also cause it to spawn a fairly potent army, so it becomes a really big risk versus reward kind of deal, and we're not even looking at the new heroes, quest battles, and all that and the like, which are also added in and touched on by this mod. Alright, so taking a step away from the actual gameplay stuff, what about the non-gameplay stuff, like balance and compatibility? Well, the former is actually phenomenally well done. Like, these don't feel weaker or stronger than anyone else. This feels like they slot in perfectly to the vanilla game. Like, this feels like actual DLC content. The latter, unfortunately, is a bit more scattered. I've had this interfere with a lot of my mods in the past, and while it has gotten a little bit better, it's far from what you would call flawless there. I had to stop myself from using the RBO Necromancer mod, for example, because he appeared, even though he wasn't really supposed to for this faction, and completely obliterated any sense of balance if I used him, because I could heal all these stronger units. So that part kind of sucked. And up until last week, the Strigoi mod, which is a pretty major vampire mod if you used, directly conflicted with this. Alright, so in general, this one's kind of screwed over by the scale of changes that it makes, while still being hamstrung by the start position issues with the core engine. And that's not the modder's fault. CA really needs to get off their back and open that kind of stuff up. but in the meantime, it does still give us quite a few issues when it comes to compatibility. But maybe in Game 3, when CA opens up those mod tools, it won't be an issue. Creative assembly, which leads us to conclusion time. So should you get Return of the Lichemaster? This is an absolute yes, but there is a small asterisk on it. So you should definitely get this mod and at least try up one complete playthrough with it, because this is sincerely one of the best faction experiences you will ever try in the game, and I'm counting vanilla races in that statement. However, you might not want to leave it constantly active in your mod list, unlike a lot of the previous mods we've mentioned, because this one can be as big of a rabble-rouser as Kemmler himself is. Again, one of the best mods to ever grace the workshop. You owe yourself to try it, but just understand that it existing in your load order has a very good chance of, well, breaking it, hence the title of this video series, I guess. Anyways, that's going to be it for today's video. As always, thanks for